Hello, I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley.
And I'm her daughter, Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Heidi and I want to welcome you to Open to Hope Conversations, the podcast.
We believe that the greatest gift you can give yourself after a loss is hope, using this moment to connect with others who have not only survived but thrived.
So let's get started. Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley. Today we have a great show with a great friend of mine, Reverend Al Johnson. I've known Al for quite a while, right, Al?
Long time, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, we met in the club nobody wants to be in, which is losing a child. I lost Scott in 1983. He was 17 in an automobile accident. And Al lost Nicholas in 1989. And he died of leukemia. I thought you'd all be really interested in hearing how we seasoned long-term grievers, I don't know what you want to call us, how we've done and things that we think could help you, because we know a lot of you are early bereaved. But I wanted to tell you something about Al. He's written a wonderful memoir called Grief Set Free. And I love that title, Grief Set Free. And we're going to be talking today how we go about setting that grief free. And he served on Bishop Sean Rowe's staff in partnership with the Dioceses of Northwestern Pennsylvania and Western New York. Well, I guess I'm going to come out with a question. Is your relationship with God different now than it was then?
Very, very different than it was then. We all have a theology of God, excuse me, for lack of a better phrase. We all have some way of believing. If we wish to believe in God, we have something that we put together in our minds and it works. It works for a period of time. And then something happens like a child dying. And generally that theology doesn't work anymore. And something else has to be constructed in its place. Now, sometimes maybe it does, but in my case, it didn't. Something else needed to be constructed in its place. It raised questions about life after death. Since we've been involved in this in a long time, I've really tried to work away from cliches. So the struggle is, there's often a struggle though about, so where is God in the midst of these kind of situations when they're happening though? That is a question that gets asked all the time. And so I had to rethink that, because my own theology is not that God is determinate in the sense that these things are all kind of determined by God and it's God's will. I don't go that way. That isn't how my theology works. There's life and we live life and God's a companion, but we have to make choices and things happen that aren't in accord with what we want. When someone goes through something like this, they're almost compelled to ask the why question. Why did this happen? Why did God let this happen? Whatever, how once it, but why? And I think what I've learned over the years is just, you got to ask the question. It's a road you got to go down. It's not going to be a road that's going to satisfy ultimately, but it's a road that we all have to go down because we're trying to catch up early on, at least we're trying to catch up with what's happened.
Mm-hmm. What's your take on grief? I know your book, Grief Set Free.
A class on object relations. And, that was when I first began to understand that after 1 year, a person should be in this certain place,
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that 1 year after Nicholas died, I wasn't even remotely close to that place. And I was just beginning to get used to the fact that he is gone from this world in the flesh for the rest of my life. The book is probably more than anything else, the book is an attempt to take on and explore cultural norms and to free us up from being obligated to the cultural norms. Because when I think about you and what I've known about you is that you and I both are in a long line of parents that have had children die. Those that went before us have helped us. Our job is to help those that come after us. And I think that there's a longevity to grief. And there's, I don't feel the same way I did 30 years ago, but I still miss Nicholas. There's a room in my heart and I can go to that room. If I stay in that room a long time, I'll be grateful and sad at the same time.
Uh-huh. Well, my take is that you just don't stay in it as long as you did.
No.
I mean, your heart gets touched every so often, but in some ways, after all this time, that touch is okay.
It becomes a blessing in many ways. But the other thing about I remember I had a parishioner whose mom had died, and she was really close to her mom. And she was talking about, 3 months after, she was walking with a friend and she's crying. And the friend said, come on, what's the problem? I mean, she's been dead for 3 months. And I realized we just still live with these cultural expectations about how it's supposed to work, even though recent studies of the brain have shown that actually grief sits in an constantly available place in our mental structure. And so it's not possible to just say, I'm not going to go there anymore. Whatever that loss is, it's inside of me for the rest of my life.
Right.
Right. So the idea, I actually got the title from, not directly from Richard Rohr, a Franciscan writer, but I got it loosely from him, just this idea that we all grieve our own way. Everyone's path of grieving is interesting and unique to the man or to the woman. And it includes surrounding circumstances, and it includes one's faith perspective and one's mental health capacities and all those and physical things. It's all those things. So it's inherently going to be unique.
What's your advice to me if I've lost a child in the last year or two?
I would search out someone who is further down the road. Mm-hmm. And I would, this is my language, I would glom onto them. I would glom onto them because they become hope then. They become hope. I'm not being facetious about open to hope, but they become hope. And then begin to think that there might be a way out of this incredible pain. And I can't see myself, but I'll rely upon the sight that somebody else has that's 2, 4, 8, 10 years. The second thing would be, there are going to be others that come along. There's always Mary, who actually lost a son as well. There's this continuance. And then I think that the thing is that if you are a God-believing person, there's always questions about that. And I just think that now I would say just hopefully over time, you'll find the grace to live with the unanswered questions, because they are unanswered questions, right?
The grace to live with the unanswered questions. That's a beautiful thing. Yeah. Because there will be, and there are.
Yep.
One of the things I love, and you and I know each other for compassionate friends, which is the place where you can go to get peer support, is that it's wonderful when you go to some chapters and you also, if you keep going, new people come in and you see how far you've come.
That's exactly right. But I remember going, though, early on after, of course, at first I thought I didn't need any of that. And then about 6 months afterwards, when I hit bottom, is absolutely how to get help and peer support, various things, therapy and all that, but peer support. And part of the overwhelming aspect was how much pain could be in one room. Mm-hmm. And that, that children die from all sorts of things. And of all ages, they die from all sorts of things. And that it's critical to form a community to get better. Mm-hmm. I mean, I loved being a part of we went for about 6 years. I loved being a part of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what would be your hope for me if I'm reading your book? What would you want me to get out of it?
I would hope that you'd get a sense that the path that you're on is the path that you're on, and there isn't a good or bad path. I would hope that you'd get a sense of an honest struggle with the relationship with the divine, with God, in the midst of trying to work one's way through a traumatic and tragic experience. And then I think, I would also like, maybe you'd come out and know that you're not alone, that somebody else is going to be there to be, praying for you and lifting you up. But most importantly, I'd say that you're not alone. Other people have been through this. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I don't know this, I heard a sermon one time that was really great. It was by this preacher, James Forbes. And the title was, "You've Got to Find Time for the Pain." And I would say that is critically important. You have to find time for the pain, because there's no way around it. There's no way around the pain. The only way is through, and perhaps with other people, or with your faith, one's faith, or that one will find companionship through that way. There is an other side. I think we get to another side where we've come to integrate what's happened, and we live a little bit more peacefully, a little more balanced, not forgetting, but there is kind of an other side where it's possible to settle into what happened and not let it be the all-consuming event that it was for a time.
I find it always jarring when there is some kind of an event that's on TV and somebody inevitably says, you never get over it. They're talking to the parent or who loses a child. You will never get over this. And I'm like, how do you know? And the reality is it's not over it. You find peace with it. You find there's something called post-traumatic growth that
right.
You can go online and look at it. And I know that because I work with a lot of people early in grief, it's very hard to think that there could be post-traumatic growth. But as you get down the road a little further, you start to see some of I've seen it with my own family, how sensitive my kids are to grief and loss and to other people and how they can sit with them.
Yep.
There are some incredible things that come from this. I think in a lot of ways, it's made my family closer.
There's no question that that's been true for Vicki and I and Hannah and Zach and their spouses. Absolutely. Yeah. And
one of the things I find a bit disturbing also is that there are books done by therapists that say you're going to get divorced, and it wasn't my experience. I did not get divorced, and you didn't get divorced.
No, I found it, I was searching that out because I had written that somebody had come up to me just maybe 2 or 3 years ago and said that, they said the statistics were 90% or something like that. And so I looked up the latest statistics at the point when I was writing from Compassionate Friends, said it was more like 18% or 20%. And that you would know this from the therapeutic perspective, easily half those people were on the path anyway.
Exactly. So how
the death became the tipping point, but it wasn't the origin of the difficulty.
Yeah. So, I mean, the one thing you do have in common is that you've had both have the same loss and nobody else has had that loss.
Correct. Right.
So you do have a commonality together.
Very, very much so. Yeah.
Well, tell us how we can get your book, Grief Set Free, a memoir. It's a lovely book, and I had the honor of being able to give you
Absolutely. And by the way, you're not only that, but your quote is on the tag for the book from the publisher. So I feel really lucky and blessed by that. You can go to the publisher of whipandstock.com and you can put in GSF 40 and get 40% off, or you can go to Amazon.
Lovely. It's a wonderful book, and there's all sorts of wonderful information that can help you. And Al's just a total inspiration to everyone who knows him. And
thank you.
And to me,
thank you,
my dear friend.
Yes.
So we want to thank everybody for joining in this show today. And Al, could you give us one last shout out that you want to say about loss or grief, or is there one last?
There used to be this guy at Compassionate Friends that just comes to mind quickly. When we started going, he'd always say at the end, it does get better. And I really just wanted to choke him. I wanted to choke him because I think I didn't believe him, or I was envious. But I think it's kind of like what you were saying before. If we're able to be kind to ourselves, and if we believe in God and can believe that our God is being kind to us and our circle of family, the wounds, the scars heal. The wounds heal. The scars are still there, but the wounds heal, and the experience becomes something that enriches our life, doesn't take away from it. Now, like you, I'd rather learn this another way, but we don't get that choice, do we? We don't get that choice.
No, we don't. It's what it is. Yeah. I want to thank everybody for joining us on this show today. And I want to remind you all, and I'm sure Al does too, that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own. And God bless.
I'm Dr. Heidi Horsley. You have been listening to Open to Hope, the podcast. You can follow Open to Hope on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To learn more, visit us at opentohope.com and go to Apple Podcasts to subscribe.
I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley. Join us again next week for another Open to Hope conversation, where we invite you to lean on our hope until you find your own.